Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Thanks so much for being here today. I wanted to share with you guys my top tips as a photographer, kind of new to the game. I've been a photographer for a whole year now, and I thought I could share some advice and some tips that I've learned 1 year into the game. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And without further ado, tip number 1, the best camera is the one that you have in your pocket. Psych, could you? I'm sick of hearing that. Every YouTuber and their freaking mom gives that advice, and a lot of times they're referring to your phone. And yes, phones have come a long way. Phones produce decent quality images now, but I want to stand and argue that a phone does not give you, 1, the optical quality of even much older cameras, and 2, the joy. They don't spark the joy that holding a physical camera in your hand does, and it doesn't give you the experience or the inspiration to go out and capture images. It's just not the same. But when you buy a dedicated device to this and you actually have it in your hand and you're playing with it, you feel so much more inspired to go out and shoot. So this first tip is actually buy the best camera that you can realistically afford. So set a price range for yourself. Are you wanting to spend $500, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000? Photography equipment gets very expensive very fast. So set a maximum cap and do your research. Look into Sony cameras, Nikon cameras, Canon cameras, Fujifilm, and figure out what you want to invest in, how you want to learn, what kind of work you want to do, and what lenses you need to do that work. When I first started, I bought a very expensive camera with a kit lens thinking that it was going to give me amazing images, and then I went out shooting with it and realized I don't actually know what I'm doing. And just because I bought a $2,000 to $3,000 camera setup does not mean that my photos were actually any good, and they actually weren't. They were kind of garbage. If you can't afford a $2,000 setup, don't feel like you can't get into photography. There are amazing cameras today that cost under $1,000, which brings me over to tip number 2 is buy used gear. Don't feel obligated to have to buy the latest and greatest and go to Best Buy and drop $2,000 plus taxes on gear. A lot of times when you buy used, you're buying equipment that someone held very dear to them at one point and took very good care of it. Photography equipment is expensive, and I guarantee you that no one is running around with it being crazy and damaging it, because as a photographer, you realize that you have to worry about the resale value of your gear if you ever want to sell it again. And it costs you so much money that you definitely feel like you need to protect it. So don't be afraid to buy used. You'll save hundreds if not thousands of dollars. Buy used gear, buy used lenses, buy a used camera. Do the best you can with what you can realistically afford, and I guarantee you'll be much happier with the results than if you went out and just dropped an absurd amount of money only to come home after taking some photos and feeling like crap over it. Or the opposite end of the spectrum, where you spent much too little. You bought a camera from 15 years ago and a kit lens, and all your photos are blurry and out of focus, and you blame the camera, you blame the lens, and then you don't like photography and you're mad because your phone took better pictures to begin with. So find that middle ground, that sweet spot, in the amount that you feel comfortable investing into photography equipment, because it is an investment first, an investment into a business you may want to start, an investment into your hobby, an investment into your creative pursuits. So buy used gear, tip number 2. Tip number 3, watch YouTube videos. Seriously, there is so much free information on the internet and on YouTube, and so many great teachers that just tell you from their perspective and their experience, and they teach you how to work your camera. Literally, a camera that you own or that you're thinking about buying, there is a tutorial somewhere out there. Someone out there in this world decided that they're gonna buy this camera and they're gonna make a tutorial on it, and it's on YouTube right now. So don't take for granted all of this free and useful information. Put in the work, do the research, study your butt off so that you can go out in the real world and apply what it is that you learn at home. Find photographers that inspire you And don't be afraid to emulate their style. I'm not saying go out and just rip them off and copy them per se, but do find inspiration from it. What kind of styling do they use? What kind of lens do they shoot on? What settings do they shoot on? A lot of photographers share that in their YouTube as you're watching their behind the scenes YouTube, so take note of these things. What settings are they at? Do you like the environment? Do they like to shoot at night? Do they shoot in the day? What kind of lighting is going on? Take note of all these things so that when you set up your photo shoots with your clients or with your friends or with models, and you're learning, you're practicing, you can go out and apply these things in the real world, and then when you bring them back and you're starting to look over them in post and editing, you can reflect on what it is that you went out and tried to learn and practice and apply. Speaking of post brings me to tip number 4, learn to edit. Learn to edit. And I know that sounds like a crazy tip to have to give someone, but I meet a lot of new photographers who become very discouraged, and I actually experienced this early on, where I felt like the photos that I was taking did not look like the photos that I was inspired by on Instagram, and I still have this issue today. And that's because my editing skills aren't as good or up to par with the photos that I'm inspired by. That's where you'll begin to find, do you like darker photos? Do you like bright and airy photos? Do you like orange teal? Do you like flat? Do you like very contrasty? And you get to decide all of this in post after having gone out and taken the photo. Tip number 5, speaking of finding your style, emulating your favorite photographers, invest in your styling. Invest in the clothes that you want your models to wear. And this is more so a tip for, I guess, portrait photographers and someone who wants to get into taking photos of models. It wasn't until I started investing in my own styling that I noticed my photos go from decent to like, wow, I actually enjoy my own photographs, and the pictures that I'm taking are the pictures that I had in my head. A frustration I had early on is that I would send models or local friends like inspo pictures from Pinterest, and I'd be like, yeah, let's do this urban-y look or let's do this ethereal look, and then they show up wearing nothing like what you sent them. But when you go out and you go to Goodwill and you go thrifting and you spend just a little bit on styling, and I know it's another investment, but that's the game, and that's honestly just one of the downsides to it, but it's an investment. So when you see even styling as an investment, you can actually send your models a photo of what you have and say, hey, I have this amazing dress, or I have this amazing style that I picked out, I have the location in mind, let's go out and make it happen. And then when you come home after the photo shoot, you don't feel so discouraged or unmotivated to edit, because the photo that you took is the photo that you wanted when you stepped foot out of your house and down to the photo shoot. I've recorded this video like 2 or 3 times, so bear with me. Tip number 6, practice, practice, practice. I can't stress this enough. You can never practice photography enough, whether it be portraiture, whether it be working with couples or landscapes. All of these YouTube videos and all of that knowledge that you soak in online does you very little good if you never step outside with the camera in hand and actually take photos. If you want to be a portrait photographer and you can't seem to get any models to work with you, you don't have a portfolio yet, photograph your friends, photograph your loved ones, style them, come up with creative concepts and build a portfolio off of the people that you know and love, because you will always love and cherish those photos, and they will too, and they will appreciate those photos. And honestly, those free photo shoots that you do in the beginning with loved ones, when they go and show those photos to other people, that's free promotion. That's people who will come back to you and say, hey, I saw the photos you took of so-and-so, I really love them, how much do you charge for a photo shoot? And then that's how you kind of start to build a clientele. So don't be afraid to offer those free photos. Don't be afraid to contact couples that you know and practice with them. You'll be surprised how many people, actually, I take that back. You'll be surprised how many people will turn down free photos because they don't find value in them, or especially when you're first starting out, they don't realize that you invested heavily into equipment and that the photos that you're gonna take are much better than what they're taking on their phone. And that's just the sad reality. But the people that do give you a chance and that do let you take photos of them will be so appreciative of those photos, and they'll treasure them forever. And you might too. And then this is how you start to build your portfolio. which is very important in the beginning. And I will say, a side note to that is my portfolio, my first 6 months, I don't think even exists anymore. The pictures I take today are so different that my portfolio has completely changed, and I'm sure that means that the photos I take in a year, in 5 years, are going to be so different that the photos I'm taking today may be irrelevant, and that's okay. Your photos, as they continue to improve with this practice, your portfolio will change with it. And that's just a little side note I throw in there for y'all. Which brings me to my last tip, tip number 7. Don't underestimate the value of a photograph. People will try to get you to take free photos of them for like ever. Today I still get so many messages of people wanting to collaborate, which is an important aspect of working with other creatives local to you. Collaborations are amazing, and it's definitely how I built most of my portfolio, but sometimes I'd like to make a little money. And if I feel like the photos that we would create together or your look doesn't match the look that I'm going for my portfolio, I don't really feel obligated to provide you with free photos, and I shouldn't have to feel bad about that. And you'll be surprised, you'll meet a lot of people who are kind of rude and kind of get really upset whenever you turn down free photos for them or you hit them with your rates. People will try to lowball you, people will try to argue with your rates, they'll try to convince you to do free photos for them. And you know what? Maybe this just isn't your target audience. Maybe that's just not your clientele, and that's okay. You can say no to clients. You can refuse clients that you do not feel reflect your values and do not see the value in your work the same way that you do. It is okay to turn down a client. And in closing, just a little bonus tip, give yourself time. Don't expect to be an award-winning photographer just 6 months, 1 year into photography. My photos today are very different than the photos I took 2 months ago, 6 months ago, when I first started a year ago. Don't feel so rushed or so pressured to have to create the perfect photos right now. It's okay to be a beginner. It's okay to not have to start at the finish line, not have that expectation of perfection. And that's very hard for me to accept myself because I tend to be very hypercritical of my work, and it's honestly just set me back, and I'm learning to finally just accept that I am where I am today, and that's okay. And with more practice and with more diligence and consistency, I will continue to improve, and you just follow the same philosophy. And as you continue to grow and develop, that's when you can stop and self-reflect and think, okay, I think I'm ready to invest in better camera equipment, in a new lens, in a new camera, and again, buy used. So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching this video. I'm thinking I want to make another video, a part 2 to this, after my next year as a photographer. So what I learned my second year as a photographer, and just kind of keep it going, sharing new tips every time, as I'm sure each year will be very different. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button on this video because that does something, and YouTubers seem to love to beg for likes. So make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Peace. Awkward goodbye. I need a catchphrase. Toodaloo!